I am here to announce that I will be banning the production of all Teslas in the United States of America.
Here, the market just closed. Shares of Tesla closed down over 14%.
If you own Tesla, as I do, I'm a shareholder, we're used to volatility. The vol on this stock's insane, and it really is driven by a tweet or whatever.
In just 72 hours, Tesla wiped out over $150 billion in market value. Not because of a supply chain shock, not because of an earnings miss, but because Elon Musk declared war on Washington. After testifying before Congress on May 14th, Musk made it clear, if innovation is punished in the US, I'll take innovation to countries that still believe in it. 3 days later, markets responded. Tesla stock plunged 14.3%. Wall Street saw it as a tantrum, but insiders knew better. This wasn't a protest. It was an exit strategy. While the White House debated EV mandates and regulatory tweaks, Musk simply got up and walked away from the table. This wasn't about one bill. It was about a shift in control. And for the first time in decades, a top US technologist didn't wait for permission to leave. On May 14th, Elon Musk made headlines not with a new product but with a statement. Sitting before Congress, he accused the US government of actively punishing innovation. It wasn't a vague complaint. It was a calculated warning, one that signaled his growing disillusionment with Washington's regulatory grip. Within 72 hours, the markets responded not with confusion but with clarity. Tesla's stock crashed 14.3%, erasing over $150 billion in value. It was the company's steepest drop of the year, and for investors, it felt less like a stumble and more like a deliberate rupture.
I'll tell you, he's not the first. People leave my administration, they leave.
Then came the retaliation from the top. On May 17th, Donald Trump fired back, accusing Musk of turning on legislation he once supported. It was a rare public rebuke from a former ally, a sign that this wasn't just a policy disagreement but a personal break. Yet beneath the headlines and finger-pointing was a deeper shift. This wasn't about EV mandates or federal incentives. This was about control, and Musk had just made it clear that Washington no longer had any over him. What made this moment different wasn't the drama, it was the scale. Tesla isn't just a car company. It underpins massive industrial energy and data infrastructure across multiple continents. When its founder signals a move away from US alignment, it's not just political theater, it's strategic realignment. The sharp sell-off in Tesla's stock wasn't just about lost faith in a CEO. It was a warning that America's most influential technologist was no longer playing by America's rules.
Musk appeared to wholeheartedly support the Trump administration's stance on what they're doing in Los Angeles. He added American flags to a post from Vice President J.D. Vance about how the president will not tolerate rioting and violence.
And in Washington, that's not just unsettling, it's dangerous. At the start of 2025, SpaceX was still considered an indispensable U.S. defense partner, launching classified payloads, maintaining battlefield satellite links, and powering communications across key geopolitical flashpoints. But that reputation didn't survive the spring. Behind the scenes, a quiet breakdown was unfolding. According to Reuters, more than $22 billion worth of government contracts tied to SpaceX are now under review as trust between the company and the Pentagon hits a critical low. The tension came to a head during the first quarter of the year when the Department of Defense formally requested emergency override access to Starlink, a capability that would allow U.S. military command to directly control satellite bandwidth during conflict. Musk refused. His response was simple but firm. Starlink, he insisted, is not a military platform. But inside Washington, the implications were seismic. The network may not be branded as defense infrastructure, but in practice, it had already become one. For the Pentagon, the denial wasn't just a policy disagreement, it was a strategic risk. Military officials had grown increasingly uneasy after previous incidents where Starlink services were disrupted, including in Ukraine, Crimea, and near Taiwan. Now, with override access explicitly denied, the department began quietly pivoting away. Key satellite procurement rounds moved forward without SpaceX. Traditional contractors Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing quickly stepped in to reclaim ground they had long ceded to Musk. There was no public statement, no formal cutoff. But the message inside defense circles was clear. SpaceX was no longer seen as a controllable asset. It still builds rockets. It still leads in launch capacity. But in the eyes of Washington, it no longer flies fully under the flag. And for a company that once symbolized the future of American aerospace, that shift may prove more damaging than any lost contract. By mid-2025, Starlink has quietly evolved into one of the most important civilian infrastructures on Earth, but with unmistakable military relevance. Originally designed to deliver high-speed internet to underserved areas, the system is now embedded in defense communications, disaster response networks, and real-time battlefield coordination. And yet, unlike traditional defense assets, Starlink doesn't come with a clear governance framework. It doesn't answer to any state, not even the one that helped fund its rise. The alarm bells started years ago, but they've grown louder. In 2023, Ukrainian officials confirmed that Starlink had been disabled over Crimea during a critical operation. In 2024, reports emerged of connectivity disruptions near Gaza at the height of military activity. Then, in early 2025, signal limitations were quietly observed off Taiwan's eastern coast during a U.S. naval exercise with no explanation. Each event followed a similar pattern. Starlink wasn't down everywhere. It was selectively off. And those decisions weren't made by NATO or the Pentagon, they were made by Musk. That pattern has now become precedent. Across Europe and the Indo-Pacific allies are beginning to ask an uncomfortable question. If Starlink has the power to shape the digital battlefield, but doesn't respond to Alliance Command, who exactly is in control? In Germany, the Federal Network Agency launched a formal assessment. In Japan, regulatory approvals for Starlink's national rollout have been delayed. Australia's Defence Review in May flagged the service as a potential point of failure in emergency protocols. Still, no bans have been issued. Because as disruptive as Starlink may be, it remains indispensable. Its latency is lower, its resilience is higher, and in many remote or contested zones, there is simply no alternative that matches its scale and affordability. That reality gives Musk leverage not through force, but through utility. Governments can't ignore Starlink because they rely on it. This is the emerging dilemma of 2025. The most advanced communication system in the world is privately owned, globally deployed, militarily significant, and structurally outside the control of any single state. Starlink wasn't built to carry the weight of geopolitics, but it does now. And there is no emergency protocol, no override system, no guarantees. In a world where speed, bandwidth, and signal control decide outcomes, Starlink isn't just infrastructure anymore, it's power. By mid-2025, the US government has stopped challenging Elon Musk directly, but the message is in the silence. There have been no public sanction, no official blacklist. Yet SpaceX has been excluded from at least 3 high-profile satellite procurement rounds once considered automatic wins. These weren't minor contracts, they were cornerstone projects tied to national security and global surveillance. But this time, the names awarded weren't SpaceX. They were Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon. Inside Washington, it's not being called a punishment. It's being framed as risk management. But the logic is clear. The Pentagon and other agencies are quietly shifting away from reliance on any system they can't fully control. And Musk has made it clear he doesn't build for control. He builds for speed, for scale, for whoever's ready to move. At the same time, SpaceX's commercial portfolio is tilting heavily abroad. Nearly 40% of its launch manifest in 2025 now belongs to international clients from Asian telecom firms to South American governments and European startups. While Washington hesitates, the rest of the world is stepping in not for ideology, but for capability. Musk delivers, and for many foreign partners, that's enough. This is the quiet unraveling of leverage. No court orders, no trade wars. Just a gradual rebalancing where the United States is no longer the primary customer and no longer the primary gatekeeper. SpaceX still flies under an American flag, but more and more it launches for a global market with global rules Washington no longer writes. And that shift may prove more irreversible than any political fallout, because once the infrastructure leaves the jurisdiction, so does the influence. The course of just a few months, he executed something far more consequential. A quiet and deliberate retreat from strategic dependence on Washington. He didn't leave the country, he left the table. Today, the systems Musk controls, from AI to satellites, energy grids to launch infrastructure, operate across jurisdictions that don't answer to US oversight. Starlink, once aligned with Pentagon ambitions, now powers broadband networks from Brazil to India, far beyond federal reach. Tesla's algorithms are being embedded in foreign energy grids. SpaceX is launching more international payloads than ever before. And Washington, once his biggest backer, has lost not just leverage but alignment. What makes this moment so defining is not the scale of Musk's empire. It's the shift in accountability. His platforms continue to shape defense, energy, and digital ecosystems around the world, but they do so without a national chain of command. There's no formal allegiance, no final override, just capability distributed globally, controlled privately, and governed only by Musk's own judgment. In a world where infrastructure is power, that's not just unusual, it's unprecedented. And so the question isn't whether Musk still needs America. It's whether America or any country can afford a future that it no longer controls. Is this the first technological secession of the 21st century? Or the blueprint for a future where governments no longer control the infrastructure they helped create? One thing is clear: power is no longer just about territory. It's about who owns the systems the world runs on and who doesn't. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown valuable, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one.